Okay, let's talk about Mother's Milk, or MM, or Marvin as you know him, the character who is central to the boys' crew. And this is a very important character who plays a very specific role. This is the Regulator, right? He exists to contain damage, not to erase the damage, not to dominate it, not to pretend or even escape it. What he does is keep the crew together. If we look at the crew specifically in terms of how they operate, Butcher represents externalized trauma, and that easily we see is turning into rage. Frenchie represents disassociation from it through substance, through chaos. And Huey just oscillates. He stumbles through it, finding points along the way that he can hold on to almost temporarily. But what MM does is he internalizes all the responsibility of it. Because while all the rest are saying, how do we win? He still asks, what's the cost and who actually is the one that's going to pay for it? So this makes him indispensable and also kind of permanently stained. So within the crew, he functions as a moral shock absorber. He translates Butcher's intent into something that's actually survivable for them as humans. He grounds Huey's fear into actions. He can stabilize Frenchie's volatility with his consistency. So they benefit from him because he absorbs the ethical recoil of what they do. They get to move fast, they get to cut corners, they get to make ugly calls and say ugly things because MM is there to question them, to slow them down, to remind them that consequences don't vanish just because, the mission demands for it, which is how they live a lot of times in those moments. So he's not the conscious above them. He's the conscious inside of them. He is there. If they're one large system, he's their internal checking mechanism. And the crew fully vexes him in a lot of ways. And we see him push back. With Butcher, it's his recklessness. And this keeps MM in constantly corrective mode. Frenchie's instability forces MM into a caretaker posture. And Huey's uncertainty requires him to be a voice of moral clarity, to kind of ground him at times, because he's the most accepting of being grounded. Now, none of these guys are intending to drain him, but the system only works because MM is giving up more than he really can afford to. This is why he's always tired. This is why his stress manifests itself physically. This is why he can never fully just disengage. So he isn't managing the mission. He's managing everyone else's damage in real time, trying to not let them go too far to the point that what they're doing doesn't matter anymore. He's also this family man inside this volatile tinderbox. And early on, there's a scene that really stands out where, he's on the mission and all of a sudden he's on the phone talking to Monique about cooking dinner, about blowing her kisses, about going home to something normal. And everybody in the van laughs. And the laughter isn't even cruelty. It's actually disbelief, because within the context of this crew, especially the characters like Butcher and Frenchie, the idea of returning to a normal domestic life sounds like a fiction. So his life structurally is really a reminder of what's actually at stake. What's at stake for them. It's extremely important. It's a symbol of what his work also destroys. And it's a quiet rebuke to the idea that damage is inevitable. So we do it and somehow we return. He really holds it all grounded in that. He's kind of the only one who's living in both worlds. And that makes him a contradiction in a group that doesn't know how to sit within this. He can't be the leader, and he isn't. He's an authority, but he doesn't have the ambition to control. He doesn't command, he stabilizes. And leadership of the boys requires some emotional attachment, willingness to sacrifice others, acceptance of monstrosity as a tool, which we see in Butcher. MM refuses that trade, so instead he becomes the limiter, the one who keeps the mission from becoming something that's unrecognizable, and he is the reason that the crew doesn't fully turn into what they're actually hunting. And we see Butcher kind of manifesting that stuff. Now, what's important when we talk about MM is talking about his origin, his original wound. And like all these characters, that original wound is what's going to fester. And this is Soldier Boy killing his grandfather. Now, psychologically, this disrupts his family order and induces instability in his life. Safety gets shattered for him early on. His family stability collapses under this unresolved grief, and justice transforms into this personal obligation. And this is very specific because this is transgenerational. This is coming from the generation that demanded civil rights and fought all those battles. He represents the children who are on the sideline watching them. If you can put that in the context, going to the civil rights, the adults of the group went out and took on these dangers. They got beaten in the head. They got dogs sicked on them. They got water hoses turned on them. Meanwhile, there were children who were watching them come home beaten, sometimes dead. And he represents the moral or the psychological cost of that. Who pays that? And we're showing it is that later generation. So what he has is truly a moral energy. A moral injury. And this is not vengeance. This is very important because this is where he divides from Butcher in a big way. Butcher wants vengeance. He wants justice. It's a very different thing. And Huey kind of, navigates between the two, flips back and forth. So it's understandable how this manifests. And this is where it gets deeper because it manifests in his fatherhood. So his relationship with his daughter is not just love, although he loves her, it's this debt consciousness. He behaves like a man who believes that I already failed someone, even if it's not my fault. So he overcompensates. So he's always sacrificing this moment for protection. He chooses danger now to avoid danger later, and he gives her a future that she doesn't really understand yet. And that's kind of the tragedy. His daughter is far enough removed from the original trauma that she can't fully perceive the cost. And that might not be a bad thing. This doesn't invalidate the sacrifice, but it isolates them. It puts those people far away from her. She doesn't have an attachment to them, so she doesn't necessarily want to inherit that. But for MM, this wound never closes because this is everything wrapped up. Justice, acknowledgement, closure, all those things that he would really want, he doesn't get. So he has to end it so that it doesn't pass along. Now, we can see how he expresses his trauma, this wound, every single day. He's not through chaos or spectacle. It's expressed through control. It's OCD behaviors, rituals, routines, hypervigilance. These aren't even eccentricities. These are his infrastructure. He organizes the world because he learned early that the world won't organize itself fairly. So this is his response to it. Instead of exploding outward, or numbing inward, or chasing external sensation, he responds by tightening up the structure, knowing where everything is, having checklists, precautions, actions for every attempt, and ideas for every contingency. It's not about comfort, but it is about being prepared for that next catastrophe. And so it's kind of a control as moral strategy, right? His control is more ethical. It's not egotistical. He doesn't believe he's superior. He believes he is responsible. So his vigilance comes from restraint. He anticipates failure. He plans for the worst case scenarios, and he assumes he'll be the one left standing to hold all the damage after. And that's why his stress manifests itself both physically and psychologically. His body carries what his environment refuses to resolve, is how I would put it. So this is the hidden cost of being the stable one that most people don't think about. And it's also deceptive because despite all his OCD, he shows up every single time. He functions. He rarely spirals out of control. So this is again that stability that comes at some cost of emotional rigidity. He has some inability to rest or disengage, and he has difficulty relinquishing control even when it's safe. So he doesn't trust calm. He expects collapse. And even moments of peace feel provisional and temporary. So his coping mechanism kind of never fully works because the control allows him to protect others, contain chaos, keep the mission from imploding, but it also ensures that he never processes his trauma in a meaningful way. He never releases responsibility. He never stops being on. He doesn't break down because breakdown would mean giving someone else the responsibility to carry, and he just doesn't think anyone else can do it. Now, obviously, looking at him morally, we know where he's aligned. He has a very strong belief system. He attempts to hold the line. He values family over the mission, although he refuses to abandon either one of them. He recognizes violence as sometimes necessary, but it's never trivial to him. So he's always stable. And we look at his relationship, how he relates to power structures. He distrusts soups, he distrusts the institutions, he doesn't like charismatic leaders, and he doesn't even go along with the ends justify the means logic. So that he tolerates what is within checked and supervised and accountable. The human cost for him is always going to be his peace, his rest, his emotional flexibility, and I worry that he never gets that back. I don't necessarily see a happy ending for MM in this. Maybe he gets some type of win that I hope satiates what he's looking for, but I don't think he'll ever get the true justification or even the family he feels like he wants. At the end of it all, like, I tend to kind of portray these characters under the arc of what the pillars are for this show. And he actually fits one of the strongest pillars. We talk about Butcher obviously representing this trauma unleashed when a character weaponizes their trauma. Homelander is another trauma character at the root of it, and he is trauma combined with his power and no accountability. He is the reaction. So him and Butcher are two very distinct pillars, whereas Mother's Milk represents trauma that is contained within himself, that he eats the cost of all the trauma that's been around him, and he pays the ultimate cost. Whereas these guys, Butcher doesn't pay the cost of his trauma. Everyone around him has. He's affected by that. Homelander pays a direct cost without ever really understanding it, and so he lashes out at everyone. So these are the three that kind of set the tone for all the characters in the storyline. So I'll get a little bit deeper into some of the other characters and break out their individual relationships relative to each other. But thanks for stopping in. As always, if you have questions or insights, drop it in the comment section. And as always, I ask that you hit that like and subscribe.